Let's have a look at question 3 in this video. So we have a market for second-hand cars, and there are 1,000 buyers and 1,000 sellers in it. Okay, the quality of the cars differ. This is uniformly distributed between 0 and 1, so really bad and really good cars. Now the seller of the car knows the quality of his car, but the buyers do not know it. They only know that there is a certain distribution. They know that they might get a good car. They also know they might get a bad car. So this is going to be a question related with uncertainty, with probabilities. Sellers value their car at the quality level of 800 times Q, and the buyers value it at 800 times Q plus 300 euros. Okay, now the price is gonna be equal to the expected valuation for the car. In part A, we want to determine which cars will be traded in equilibrium. Now, first of all, the highlight of the question over here, and what's the intuition? We can see that if there would be no uncertainty, right, if we would not have to deal with these probabilities and we would actually pay the price that we are willing to pay, then we would pay the valuation. The sellers would charge the valuation of the car. The buyers are willing to pay how they value the car. And we can see that the valuation of the buyer for a given quality of the car is greater than the valuation of the seller, is greater by 300 euros, meaning that the transaction should hold because the seller would get the money that he wants and the buyer would pay what he wants. So everything would be smooth. But this is a second-hand market, and we do not know, as buyers do not know what they might expect. So because they don't know, they have to take into account this uncertainty by looking at expected value, not the actual value of the car. So how can we calculate that expected value? And how can we understand when the cars are going to be traded? Well, they are going to be traded when the willingness to pay of the buyer covers the willingness to sell of the seller. So the willingness to pay of the buyer must be at least the same as the willingness to sell of the seller. What would be the willingness to pay? Well, we just discussed that the willingness to pay would be the expected value of that car. And that car is distributed on the level between 0 and 1. So between really bad cars and really good cars. So between 0 and 1. Now, to find out this equation, right, we're interested in the minimum quality level for which the transaction will hold, for which the car is gonna be sold. When we're speaking about trade here, we're speaking about sales, which cars are gonna be sold. So to find that level, we must find the point where the willingness to pay of the buyer is actually equal to the willingness to sell of the seller. Meaning there is going to be a quality in between this distribution that's gonna make the buyers willing to pay the same as what the sellers expect. What is that level? Well, we just said that's going to be the expected value. And how can we calculate the expected value? Based on the valuation of the buyer. So the expected value that the buyer has for this car is gonna be the average between getting a really bad car, the worst case scenario, which is a 0 quality car, and that certain level which makes it how can I say that, which makes the buyer agree with the seller, right? It's gonna be in between this point. So to find out that, we'll use some simple math, which is gonna be equal to 1 over 2. So we will have over here 1 over 2 times the valuation of the buyer when he has the worst case scenario in mind, and that would be 800 times 0 plus 300. So 800 times 0 plus 300, we write it like that, 800 times 0 plus 300, and with the remaining 50% probability, if you will, we can look at it that way. So there's a 50% chance that he might get the worst case car and 50% chance that he might get the car that will make the transaction hold. So in that case, we would have 800 times, let me put this in brackets as well, 800 times the quality that we're looking for plus 300. And now it's a matter of math over here. So this is a matter of math. Let's see how we're going to solve the math. We will have the expected value of the buyer equals to 1 over 2 times 800, which is going to be equal to 400 plus, 800 is times 0, so that's going to be just 0. Sorry about that. This is going to be 0. And 1 over 2 times 300 will just 150. So 150, let me change colors, this is too dark. 150 plus 1 over 2 times 800 times Q, that's 400 times Q, so 400 times Q. Plus 1 over 2 times 300 is going to be 150 again, so plus 150. Now if we solve this entire math to write it as a simple expression, the expected value that the buyer is willing to pay is going to be 150 plus 150, that's 300 plus 400 times the quantity. Okay, Now, we said that this must be at least the same as the willingness to sell of the seller. So we'll make it greater than or equal to the willingness to sell of the seller. And the seller is willing to sell his car at his own valuation. He doesn't have to expect anything. He doesn't have to deal with any uncertainty because he knows the value of the car. Remember, it's told in the question. Somewhere over here. Sellers, where was it? Yeah, the seller of a second-hand car knows the quality of his car. So there's no uncertainty for him. There's no expected value to calculate. We'll just deal with the valuation of the seller. Hope this all makes sense. So this expected value of the buyer must be greater than or equal to the valuation of the seller, meaning that 300 plus 400 times Q must be greater than or equal to the valuation of the seller, which was equal to 800 times the quantity. 800 times the quantity. Now let's take the quality. I'm sorry, this is the quality of the car. Let's take the quality term on the other side. So we will be left with 300 greater than or equal to 800 minus 400. That's 400 times the quality level. If we divide both sides by 400 to find that quality level, we'll have 300 divided by 400. That's 3 divided by 4, less than or equal to the quality, or let's just write it in terms of the quality first because it's kind of more intuitive to look at it that way. 3 over 4. If the quality of the car is less than 3 over 4, is less than, I don't know how to interpret this, 75% of the best car that he can get, then the trade will be made, because in that case the seller is getting the money that he is expecting, that he wants. If it's beyond that, if it's above 3 over 4, because of uncertainty, because of this asymmetric information, the buyers are not willing to pay enough for it, so to cover the seller's desire. He will not satisfy the seller's price. That's why the trade will not hold beyond that point. Meaning that on our graph, this quality level is going to be equal to 3 over 4, and everything up to that point will make the transactions hold. Hope this all makes sense, and in the next video we go to part B.